Clients. You know those folks. People calling your firm, asking questions, shaking down your paralegals, never answering your calls, calling you too much, not answering emails, sending you every email, forgetting court dates, crying in your office, looking into your eyes, wondering if they can trust you? You strange lawyer person. The law firm is a place of service, serving clients. Yet, most law firms think of themselves as brainscapes, safe pastures where expert lawyers with judicious minds get to graze on the legal problems brought to them and digest and then express good legal advice and expert assistance. It's all about the service, but not of the clients, but of the law. What if there was a different way? A small change in perception that could lead to big improvements, maybe even more business, more referrals, more calls, and yes, more clients. That's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. Practicing the law, client service, and how to get on the road to somewhere. Ready to run? Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consult Webs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that expands and contracts with the humidity, just like your Uncle Albert. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and professional developments. I am Jake Sanders, the human French fry. And with me, as always, is the Hamburglar himself, Paul Julius. Paul, you smell great.
Robble. That's all. Isn't that all Hamburglar ever said?
I don't think he said much. But
that
he
was the limit of his vocabulary, but how he said it.
Robble.
There was so much meaning in those robbles.
Yeah, it's a robble rouser is what he was.
Yeah, well, and there's the robbles he didn't say.
It's the robbles I didn't hear from you, Hamburglar. Dear Hamburglar. By the time you read this, I will have left. But let's just not steal the show from ourselves and then maybe tell the audience what's on it and what they have in store.
On the show, we talk about client development and relations, and then we interview author, lawyer, mediocre runner Dave Kempston about his book, That's Why They Call It Practicing the Law. And then we put our guests through the Ironman, 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today on the Hot Take Buffet is by Cordell Pavin on Above the Law. It's entitled, Lawyers, Don't Make These Client Development Mistakes in 2019. It's a sponsored article from Lateral Link. Paul, you found this, and it is a doozy. So introduce it for us.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that Lateral Link is a legal recruiting firm. So I just want to point that out.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, I just want everybody to know, kind of what their angle at this. Cordell writes in here, it quickly became apparent that client development is about relationship building and client management. And there's a whole list of things you got to do here, and I'll run through it. Just do good work. Don't be a generalist. Don't try to be a salesman. Don't just focus on attracting new clients. Don't focus your attention on the wrong clients. Don't fail to differentiate yourself. Don't fail to prepare a business plan. Don't fail to operate as a team.
So those are the things we should do?
You're right.
I get confused with the advice. I was so inspired by what I shouldn't be doing that
I mean, I understand this is written with good intentions, and
a brain
certainly seems to be coming at this.
He has fingers. He's used a keyboard.
I almost feel like each one of these points probably could have been an article on its own. There's just not quite enough here to, don't just focus on attracting new clients, for example.
Right, and so the heart of this is basically like how you're marketing your practice, how you're generating business, how you're comporting yourself with your clients. That this touches on all of those things, and then I think just wipes its hands all over it.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that it does, but then you get into here and it says, like, don't just focus on attracting new clients. I realize that a young lawyer with few clients might not have a choice, but a lawyer in a large firm would be well served to spend the majority of her time on current clients. Some suggest that 80% of time should be spent on relationship building, only 20% of the time on reputation building. The theory is the time and cost to replace a client lost is a multiple of the time and cost spent to make that client a satisfied one.
Well,
What do I do with that?
The last episode with Weimer Snyders, who's talking about marketing and advertising principles laid down for 50 plus years. You better focus on getting new clients because that's the only way you're going to expand. That's just the way this works. If you're not focused on that, because you focus on all of your clients and make sure, they're loyal. And then what? Who's been trying to open the door? Like that's the first part. I have a huge problem with that. If you think you're going to build your book of business by just focusing on the people that are here, that misses the point. That's not marketing. That contains nothing towards expanding your brand's influence and reaching out to category buyers who you just have to be in their decision set. But if you just do good work, it's okay. That's a lie. Don't focus your attention on the wrong clients. I don't know how you'd know that. Don't fail to differentiate yourself. Don't fail to prepare. Don't fail to operate. This is the worst advice I've ever read because all it is negative. And he's like, don't do what we did. We did this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Any lawyer walking away from this, trying to go back to her law firm, trying to make one small iota of an improvement to the client's existence, to their staff's existence or their own, I just couldn't find a shorter pier to take a longer walk off than read this article and say that this is good marketing advice. It just destroys me. And it's interesting that Cordell built a national construction law practice at an AM Law 100 law firm. So you're giving advice to the majority of lawyers from the small percentage of someone, and I don't know if he had to build his book or what he did, but he's just telling you what you shouldn't be doing.
And just generally.
I
think that's the thing that gets me the most about it.
Great point, dude.
Look at this. Don't fail to differentiate yourself. Okay. So you and I have talked about branding quite a bit.
Right.
And, we firmly believe that your brand is what people say about you, not what you say.
Right.
This says don't fail to differentiate yourself. Many lawyers and law firms fail to differentiate themselves from their competitors. Their websites and website bios look like many others. It's fair to a point.
Right.
Your potential clients discern the little differences. How can you differentiate yourself? The key is striving to understand your client's business, identify a potential problem, opportunity, or change that impacts potential clients, and present them.
What? I don't get it. I don't even get that.
I don't understand what that means.
I don't even think that was a complete sentence.
I believe potentially you were involved in an auto accident. And as it happens, I have experience with people who have been involved in automobile accidents.
I will differentiate myself through my quality of legal services. Are you satisfied with your care? It lacks such tact. It lacks such humanity. He's saying something good there, though. He's saying you need to understand your client. And that is what David's saying later. Yes. He said the key to all of this is client service mentality. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of positive examples he provides, a lot of positive ways you can use customer-centric thinking. But, just as a lawyer, trying to, grow their business, trying to figure out where to get this inspirational advice from, trying to decide who should I listen to as far as marketing is concerned. If I really want to develop, clients and start getting more business, you don't listen to this article. Read David's book, because the heart of getting more is thinking from your client's perspective. Then you can have marketing and advertising strategies that come from that then generate new clients. but you could only do that if you respected the clients you had and listened to them. So there's parts here that make sense for what Cordell's saying. But all of it is couched in such a negative don't and beware and pitfalls and failures that tends to not be the best way to get at the heart of the problem, or maybe find a solution that could get to the heart. I think you need to figure out, from where am I going to be thinking of changing these problems or addressing getting new business. If you're coming from this client-centric thought, client service-oriented thought, then you support that at the practice level. Things will start working in a synergistic way. But if you can't decide on what to do or don't do, or what is the most important thing, because Cordell says it's just your work, but David and everyone else who we've had on this show says that's not enough. They come to you for that 15%, but there's another 85% of soft skills that you need to bring, that then you can differentiate, that then you will not attract the bad clients, that then you could build a business plan over, and that then you could operate as a team under, and that then you wouldn't have to worry that you're a generalist because you're focused on that client-centric thing. And then you wouldn't have to worry if you're a salesman because you're focused on clients, and then your work doing that good quality, JD stuff, that's just the icing on top of a cake. Yeah. But the bakery that this article came out of is just on fire.
I'll tell you what, I mean, it does. I'm not going to say it's completely unsalvageable, because there is, he does say something that we touch on later with Dave, where he says developing business requires working on your listening skills. This is in the part about don't be a salesman. And you and I have talked about this when it comes to managing social media, or doing content, or how you approach things. People want to know how do you fit into my life? What is it that you're going to do for me? Like, I don't care where you went to school or what building your office is in or any of that crap. How are you going to solve my problem? And that, I think, does make a difference. But some of this other stuff I think is a little vague, and really, one other thing I want to say too about focusing on the customer service angle. It pays off in so many ways, and it's not a difficult thing to do. Right. We said it a ton of times: reviews, social proof, that kind of stuff. That matters. People look at that, and just like this article says, in the landscape of legal websites, there may be a lot of similarities, and I don't think it's a bad idea to try and differentiate yourself. But what can differentiate yourself better than having a boatload of positive reviews?
Right. And but that comes from being client-centered and client service oriented enough to know that you need to curate the environment and the experience to engender the opportunity for clients to provide that feedback, and then to avail yourself to listening to it. So good advice. But that hits to the heart. It's the listening, it's the service. And I think what's great about David is he frames it in a way that makes it seem like this isn't a one and done. Cordell's talking about like, you'll be successful if you do this. But David's saying you'll feel success if you focus on practicing in this manner.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting and such a small little tweak. But, I think a lot of us are obsessed with fixing things, switching things, hitting buttons. And really what we need to do is start focusing on lifestyles and patterns and the way we behave, and just small bit by small bit, you can make improvements. But that's why his book, that's why they call it Practicing the Law. It's all about practicing on getting towards that place. A lot of this marketing advice is, this is the way it should be done. Tattoo this on your forehead. Um, but it's not a one size fits all. And that's why probably a lot of lawyers are turned off by marketers and salesmen and don't want to think like that. There's something that Dave has that I think you guys can really, it'll roast your marshmallows because it's hot enough to attract a big group, but it's warming to the soul because this is stuff you're going to work on. This isn't stuff you're going to complete or change or fix. This is the beginning of a race. It's a marathon, so and he talks about running. He talks about Cormac McCarthy. He has just trash bags of quotes from famous people.
We get some Hemingway in there.
Yeah, he just does it all.
Yeah, it's a good interview.
Yeah. So let's hop to it.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Any lawyer looking to grow their business online can generate more leads from their website by hiring ConsultWebs. After working with lawyers exclusively since 1999, we've tested thousands of web designs and marketing strategies, so we know what flips and what flops. For more information, visit www.consultwebs.com today.
And now, a lawsome interview.
David Kempston was born and educated on the West Coast. He moved to Minnesota to attend law school over 29 years ago. Since graduating from the University of Minnesota Law School in 1992, magna cum laude and Order of the Coif, he has spent over 26 years as a litigator, primarily handling workers' compensation claims. David believes focusing on the attorney-client relationship will lead to excellent lawyering, and his book, That's Why They Call It Practicing Law, demonstrates how. This practical book encourages lawyers to do the ordinary tasks better. After arranging our stars, we're lucky to get David on the show today to talk about this gem of a book. David, welcome to Lawsome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good to be with you this morning.
So explain the book. That's Why They Call It Practicing Law, and then give us an overview of it. Who's it for, and how's it different than other books?
Sure. It's a compilation of my philosophy of litigation. I have tried over 400 cases over the last 2 decades, not quite as many as Abe Lincoln. I believe he had about 500, but working on it. And over the years, I began to notice things. And one of the things I noticed right away was that my clients didn't always recognize good lawyering. In fact, they often did not. They would confuse bull in a china shop behavior with good lawyering, and they would laud that. And conversely, when I would do something, that was subtle and clever and, worthy of praise, a client might not see that at all. And I learned that clients, they don't always recognize good lawyering. In fact, they typically don't, but they do recognize and almost always respond to good customer service. And I began to realize that from a client's perspective, they may not know whether you know the law or not, but they do know if you provide good customer service. And if you step back and think about it, the law is a people business. And at the heart of that business is a relationship, and we call it the attorney-client relationship. And my premise in the book is that if you focus on improving the attorney-client relationship, if you focus on improving that client relationship, that you're going to provide better service to your clients, and you're going overall to have a better relationship. But when I say overall or typically or usually, that's because, as you both well know, there's always going to be 2 or 3% that you cannot please no matter what you do. But most clients, in my experience, after a couple of decades of doing this, do appreciate and they tend to respond to good customer service. So the book is not saying, hey, ignore the substantive law. I mean, who cares if you know your substantive? I'm not saying that. My preference is that you master your substantive law, know the procedure, know the substantive law, be excellent at that. But, go ahead and work on improving your people skills. And, to me, that's like saying, gee, Dave, and you fellas can't see this today. I wore a spring tie for you in hopes of ushering in that long-awaited season up here in the frozen tundra. But
yes.
If you were watching me right now, I would hold up my yellow flower tie against my blue shirt and I would say, that's like saying Dave can't wear a yellow flower tie with a blue shirt. Well, that's a false dichotomy. I can wear a yellow tie with a blue shirt. Whether or not that's a social faux pas is a different issue. But my whole point here is master the law, but then work on your people skills. So in my book, I present 22 practice pointers on how to improve the relationship. And you're not going to read it and, how did Alexander Pope put it all those years ago? What oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. You're probably not going to read the book and go, gee, Dave, this is rocket science. I never thought of this before. But I think it's a real good primer. And I've got some practical points that if you put into work, then I think you're going to improve your practice. And, in this day, all the buzzwords are, hey, how do you brand yourself? How do you distinguish yourself? Younger lawyers, we're always talking about finding your voice. Okay. Well, if you or your firm provide great customer service, I think you're going to profit in a couple of different ways. First off, you're going to separate yourself from other lawyers. Number two, you're going to keep most of your clients satisfied. Again, it's not all, but most. And, it's, I think in the modern marketing parlance, that's maintaining your market share. And the third thing you're going to do is you're going to generate new clients based on satisfied client referrals. So I think that working on your people skills is a great way to go. And some people say, gee, Kempston, I wasn't, really all that outgoing, or I'm not all that outgoing, or I wasn't voted Glee Club president in high school. And I get that. I get that we all start somewhere. I was a very mediocre runner in high school, and I ran on a cross-country team where my coach would talk about containers, and he'd say, God gives us all a different size container. And by that, he meant talent and ability, but it's up to you how much you fill it up. And, you can do the same with your people skills, and you can always improve your customer service skills. So that was a long-winded answer to your.
That's great.
The perfect amount of wind on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make an excellent point that you may not be not you personally, but I'm saying in general, someone may not be the most affable person, but good people skills can just be timely response to an email. Maybe an email response that's more than one sentence, something like that. Just throwing these things out there. But I'm curious, like, what's the one most common error or area that you think lawyers fail at when it comes to customer service? Like, is it like you just answer the phone wrong? You don't call people. Like, what would you say? Like, this is the biggest mistake that people make.
Great question. And my answer, my pet peeve is lawyers who don't return phone calls, or in this era, who don't respond. Lawyers love to talk about how busy they are. Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Sure. Great. You know what? We're all busy, but I will tell you a little secret. We all have time to do that which we think is important. In fact, we all do that which we think is important, typically. And I hear more gripes from, clients that are out kicking tires. Maybe clients are coming in, not my client, but someone saying, hey, I've got this lawyer, I've got this case. I never hear back from my lawyer. What's going on? So I try to give clients in my book, I talk about that. I say one way to demonstrate care or to improve the relationship is to be timely, and give a client an expectation ahead of time. So when I meet with, what I call a potential client, and I'm giving them I'm learning their story and I'm explaining the law to them, I may or may not end up representing them. But one of the things that I tell them is if they do have questions, they can follow up, and that they will hear back from me within 24 hours, unless I'm dead, out of town, or something bad happened. And so I give a client, and then as I move into the relationship, the client has an expectation. I'm going to hear back from Dave within 24 hours. And usually it's sooner than that, but that's the outside. And sometimes it's as simple as me coming up for air after trying a case and saying, hey, I'm buried, got your email, I'm going to follow up with you in another day. But at least that way the client knows, that I haven't fallen off the face of the planet and I haven't forgotten about them. And what I found, if I establish the 24-hour rule, you don't get the 3 emails. First email, hey, here's my question. Second email, hey, did you get my first email? Second, third email's irritated, all in caps. Where are you? You avoid that kind of stuff.
In a former incantation of my life, at my law firm, I remember the shareholders. I was trying to get more in on the client experience, and I was saying, we have to create the ultimate client experience. They were on board with that, but they kept saying you can't please all of them. There's just always going to be a crazy person. So it doesn't quite make sense to go all in on client centricity. But I feel like that was just an excuse to maybe not listen to me, or B, no one wants to spin their wheels for nothing. But I think lawyers are inspired to change. They read a lot of books. They go to a great marketing conference, or they get inspired from a CLE or a seminar that they've attended. But when they come back to their practice, the paralegals are on fire, the trials are hot and heavy, and there's no way to enact any amount of change. And so any amount of inspiration that you had so clear in your eyes is now gone, because you just have to keep going. What's your advice here for like maybe a stopgap measure where they can put in some client centricity or use some of this inspiration you're sharing?
Well, it's a great question. If we were in trial, I'd object because it was compound, but I'm going to try to break it down. And, first off, what your former partners or bosses used to tell you, there's truth in that. I mean, not all people are kind, not all people are nice, and, boundaries are good. So it's not that you're available all the time and, you drop everything to attend to everybody's need.
There you go.
Right. We are finite creatures. Some of us are more capacious than others, but all of us have limits, and it's real important to understand your limits. So, and plus it's, test everything and hold on to that which is good, or in the words of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify, when clients give you information. I've been around the block, so many times I've turned into a fan. I've represented a lot of people. I work in a very high volume industry. I've tried a lot of cases, represent people of all sizes, shapes, forms, walks of life. And so you do need, and actually in my book, I talk about, protecting yourself. I talk about, one of my chapters is actually learn to recognize a sunk cost. Sometimes you're pouring resources down a black hole. And, my book, I talk about trusting your gut when you're in that initial client interaction. If your alarms are going off, good golly, listen to them, and don't think it's going to get better when you double down and start representing the person. It's actually going to get worse. So some of the stuff you can do prophylactically up front. But to your question about lawyer burnout, the funny thing about lawyers is it's hard to paint with one wide paintbrush, but by and large, we're type A's. We're self-confident. We think we know everything. And a fundamental premise in my book is a wise person listens to advice. All right, the title, that's why they call it practicing law. You mean we don't call it perfecting law? Well, no, because you never get there. So you go to the CLE, they give you, the 18 things you ought to do better to be a better person and a better lawyer, and you walk out of there all inspired. My experience with change is that usually it's not cataclysmic. Typically happens, incrementally. So, for example, when I present seminars on my book, I present quite a bit of them. I tell people, look, take away one thing, take away two things. I mean, how many of us have sat through CLEs that just bored you stiff? And sometimes the only way you can redeem the 2 hours that you just put into this thing is to take one thing away and put that into practice. So I'm a runner. I told you I was a mediocre runner in high school. At the age of 51, I remain a mediocre runner.
Nice. Good for you.
Yeah. Well, people will come to me and say, gee, Dave, you've run for all these years. I want to start running. And, what should I do? My first piece of advice is be realistic. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Maybe start walking and then work your way into jogging, and then maybe a couple of times a week. And I think the same is true when we come away from a mountaintop CLE experience and we come back to our office, and indeed someone lit the place on fire. Every file in your office, had an emergency that expired yesterday.
Right.
And it's hard. I mean, it's very hard to change. And that's one of the other premises in my book is that you've got to be willing to think it through.
Mhm.
We talk, lawyers love to talk about how much we work. We love to talk about how busy we are.
Yes.
Well, how about changing the paradigm? How about being fruitful? And I like that word because it connotes productivity. I know lots of people that are busy, and I'm in a pure contingent practice.
Mhm.
So being busy doesn't mean nothing. I mean, what do they say? A million times zero. Yeah, anything times zero is always zero, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you're flailing about, you know, maybe you want to take time to think through what you do, how you do what you do. What's one of the definitions of insanity? It's doing
Yeah.
the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're
So-
in marketing, so that's actually our motto.
So lawyers every once in a while just ought to stop and say, this is apart from self-care. This is apart from, having a hobby or two. This is thinking through how you do what you do. Does this make sense? I read an interesting book a little while ago, The Way of the Seal, and talks about the author, Mark Devine, talks about we are in the age of acceleration. And it's true. I mean, things are changing so quickly. Social mores are changing. Technology changes.
Sure.
And the fact that we're doing this over Zoom, an
Right.
app that didn't exist, 5 years ago?
Sure, yeah.
And so things are just changing. So we can't just keep doing things. Listen, well, this is just how I am. Well, okay. The old ways don't always work. So be willing to learn.
Mm.
We have, as lawyers, we learn the law, right? And we never know all elements of our area of substantive practice. I'm a Minnesota work comp lawyer, and I tell clients my knowledge is 6 inches wide and 42 feet deep. The funny thing is I'm always learning something new. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And that's true with our client customer service skill set.
Right.
We can always improve.
Yeah.
It just takes work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and we hear a lot about this client-centric thinking. And I think a lot of lawyers think they give 100% the best ever service already.
Yeah, already.
I mean, yeah, like, of course it's not, we're not talking about me here.
I do, right.
Yeah. Cause I got this locked down, but how can a lawyer or a law firm check if they actually are client-centric?
Well, a great way is if a client says to you, I know you're really busy. I know if that's a lead in with lots of clients, then maybe when you're personally interacting with clients, you're giving them the impression that you don't have time for them. Believe me, I get it. It's a balancing act. I mean, you do need to shepherd phone calls. As a plaintiff lawyer who's listening to people's injury stories, some folks will take all day if you'll.
Oh yeah, they will.
So you need to be surgical. You need to be precise. But a trick I love on the phone. Okay, this is a hard one. And I talk about this in my book. And it is to ask at the end of a convert when there's a pause, especially with difficult clients, you say, all right, and is there anything else? Now, that's a remarkably dangerous question because sometimes, you open up another 5 minutes and then the person winds down and you say, okay, is there anything else? And you might go through this a couple of times. It's actually a very good deposition taking tactic.
Nice.
I've seen surprising, by the time the person was done, their eyeballs itched from a back injury. Is there, but if you do this with a client on the phone, and you don't have to do it all the time, but what you will find is that the client will end the conversation and say, no, I think that's it. And they're not feeling like you're kicking them off the phone. Now, I realize it is a balancing act. And, there are 24 hours in a day. And I don't care how creative of a biller you are. You can't get around the fact that, each day has X amount of time.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not saying you just sit there and listen. But there are some tools that you can implement where a client is going to feel cared for. And again, if a client feels cared for, you put some relational equity in the bank, all right? And perhaps a bill comes due and you can withdraw. I'm a plaintiff lawyer. One of my other pet peeves is lawyers who say, "Oh, just trust me. Just trust me."
Whoa.
You want to immediately put your hand over your wallet, okay? But sometimes in the courtroom, a client is saying, "Oh, we need to go this way." And you're saying, "No, we need to go this way." And that might be where you say, "You need to trust me on this because I've been here before." But you've got some equity in the bank, or, heaven forbid you make a mistake. I realize, I'm going public with the fact that lawyers aren't perfect. I'm sorry, guys. I just rocked your world.
What?
Lawyers aren't perfect. You heard it here first, okay? The corollary to that is that lawyers make mistakes once in a while, all right?
Right.
And if you practice long enough, you're going to make a mistake. And what's interesting about mistakes, and I talk about this in my book, is when you mess up, fess up. Don't pull a Richard Nixon and try to, slide it under the rug.
The rug.
Why not? Why not? Because the cover-up often gets you in more trouble than the original offense. So if you make a mistake with a client matter and you are straightforward and you are apologetic and you got a little bit of relational equity in the bank, guess what? There might be some forgiveness or grace extended your way.
Well, it's an interesting concept because it's a cognitive bias called the pratfall effect. Is if you kind of admit some of a small little weakness in the front, it makes you seem more trustworthy because who would admit that? So my go-to thought is the Dick Van Dyke Show opening, which probably no one knows. I mean, we do. But the beginning, he is this character, but then he trips and falls and you're worried and everybody's worried, but then he gets up and then, you feel a connection to this person because there was a little imperfectness. And I think a lot of people want to present the bulletproof reality. Whereas if you just show a little bit of humanity, that relational equity, I love that concept because you're giving a little and you're getting a little, but it's all going into the bank of the experience that you guys are exchanging upon. And I am just in love with your metaphors, David. But listen, you actually have a great turn of phrase. It seems like you have a giant bag of quotes that you're just like ready to throw at folks. I can tell you're a writer. You got an English literature degree. You got a book under your belt. What's your advice for lawyers out there that fancy themselves, a writer? What writing this book? What was the kind of thought there? And then what are your inspirational little tidbits for, potential authors out there?
Yeah, my motivation for writing the book was I'd given this as a seminar a number of times. And my wife of almost 30 years says, "Gee, Dave, why don't you write a book? It's in and it was in my head. So finally I let it out. It took a while. And my youngest son is a business major at Baylor, and he always teases me and he says, "Gee, Dad, could you have picked a smaller niche market? Customer service for lawyers? Are you kidding me?" And it's funny because the book is not, even though it's set in the context of a legal practice, it has much broader application than just attorneys. It's really simply principles of good customer service in the context of the attorney-client relationship. And one of the practice pointers in the books is don't procrastinate. Procrastination is the lawyer killer, right? When we read little summaries of admonitions from our state's respective, bar police, the Office of Professional Responsibility, procrastination is what gets a lot of lawyers. So my children hate this, and I put it in my book because when they were little and they gripe about homework or doing something, I'd say, "Well, you know what I always say?" And they go, "I know, Dad." And they roll their eyes and they say, start right now. Now in the book, I'm talking about task, and I'm using the word RIGHT. So here's my advice to aspiring writers: start right, WRITE. Start right now. Okay. And that's a pretty clever twist. I will tell you, however, that writing is very hard work. And to quote James Michener, I'm not a very good writer, but I'm an excellent rewriter. And that's Michener. I'm not saying I'm an excellent rewriter.
That's a great quote.
Justice Brandes, here we go. There is no great writing, only great rewriting. And Anne Lamott, who wrote a very humorous book on writing called Bird by Bird, almost all good writing begins with terrible first efforts. You need to start somewhere.
Mm.
And Hemingway, I'm not a big fan of the Hemingway hero.
Yeah.
But he has a wonderful quote about the toil that's associated with writing. And he says, work every day, no matter what has happened the day or night before, get up and bite on the nail. And I think he really encapsulates it there, because we have this idea, well, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to write this flowery prose and it's really going to be good.
Right.
It's not. It's not. I don't care who you are. And I'm not saying that my prose is great. I've gotten very good feedback on my book. That's why they call it Practicing Law. It's available on Amazon. I've gotten lots of nice reviews.
Mm-hmm.
But I was reading somebody the other day. I went back and I was reading Cormac McCarthy's book, The Road. Now,
oof. Boy.
Cormac hits it out of the park.
I mean, straight up slaughters it. I mean, ugh.
He can write like nobody's business.
Oh, and he takes a look at all your grammar and your commas, and he's like, I'm just going to throw that in the dumpster. I
could never write like that, even if I rewrote and rewrote.
Never would. Never. No, you'd look dumb. You'd look stupid.
So my point, too many words. If you want to write, start writing. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the only way to learn how to write, it's like riding a horse. It's like trying a case. You can take all the trial practice classes you want in law school. You can go watch all the senior partners try all the cases you want. But until you start trying cases, guess what? You don't know how to try a case.
Man, I mean, it is such a correlation to the performing arts backgrounds that me and Paul have. It doesn't matter until you're on the stage and they're counting off, and here we go. And you have to embrace it, and you have to say, well, did I do what I was supposed to do? Did I practice? Am I prepared for this passage? But it doesn't matter until you're in the seat. So you just have to put your butt in the chair. But what great advice, what great examples. So I'm interested to find this book. I'm interested to find more about you, David. Where can people learn more about you, David Kempston?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and I've got a Twitter account. I've got a terribly interesting Instagram account that everybody wants to follow. But I think the LinkedIn place, David Kempston, is going to probably be the best source of information. It has a link to the book, and it's got information about my practice there. And otherwise, if you want to get at the book itself, the easiest way to do that is to go to Amazon, and you can type in your Amazon books. You can type in, that's why they call it Practicing Law, or you can simply type in my name, David Kempston, and the book will pop up. It's on Amazon. You can get a paperback for about $10, or if you're a Kindle, you can get a Kindle for about $4 or $5, or if you're a Kindle free and you pay the annual subscription price, you can read it for free. So there's a couple different ways to get at the book.
5 questions we ask everyone.
Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Well, it would have been The Road by Cormac McCarthy just a couple of days ago.
All right. Number 2, what is your favorite place?
My favorite place? Well, I spent 4 years in Santa Barbara. I went to college there. It's kind of hard to top good old SB.
Man, yeah, I hear you. Okay. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
What sites? Oh, I'm always on LinkedIn, popping around at what other people post. I tend to be eclectic that way. Follow lots of people on Twitter, so I don't know. I try to avoid the dog to his vomit, go back to the same thing every time. So that's rather not a specific answer, but
no, it's good. A lot of people, Twitter feeds, social media. That's there's a lot of stuff happening there.
I love
Number 4,
If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
One condiment.
Oh,
Probably mustard.
I know. That's probably one of the most popular answers.
None
Next to
the-
some form of alcohol. Okay, number 5. We've made it to the end here. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
I love to be outside. I live in Minnesota and it's odd. I'm outside all winter. I run outside, I snowboard, I walk outside. So going for a walk is a great way for me to unwind after a long day.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.